And Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It is brought to you by the Fanatics Sportsbook at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. Don't forget, we're there every Monday. Go there this football season. It's the place to be. The Gallery. Go to Ocean. Go for the win. For more info, visit oceanac.com. Andrew DiCecco from the Inside the Birds podcast. InsideTheBirds.com is here for today's Football at 4. It is a rematch of the Super Bowl, which the Eagles won 40-22. Overall, this is the 11th Super Bowl rematch in the following season, the third straight year it has happened, actually, by the way. And the defending champions are 7-3 in those 10 rematches. And let's bring in Andrew DiCecco. We saw these two teams in February. It was not a fair fight, Andrew. How different are the two teams this time around? They're facing in week 2 as opposed to a little deeper in the year. But how different are the Eagles and the Chiefs?
Yeah, I'm not loving the week 2 matchup. It sort of takes away the luster, the allure of this game, Mike. But this is a different Kansas City Chiefs team, and it's a different Eagles team, as you might expect, than the ones that met in Super Bowl 59. I don't know that Kansas City has the same offensive firepower that they once had. Now, they do have Patrick Mahomes, and as long as Travis Kelce's there, they're going to find ways to move the football. Isaiah Pacheco, a good downhill running back that I think adds an interesting element to their offense. But even defensively, they're not quite what they've been. I'm expecting this to be sort of one of those games where Patrick Mahomes looks to try and test the Eagles' second level and really even the third level with the safety play, which with Kelce, and try to get some of those offensive weapons going. Jahad Campbell, I thought, had a really good game against Dallas, and that had a nice play down the seam there on Brevin Spanford, the tight end down the field. And I think they're going to try to find ways to pepper his side of the field with Travis Kelce, but I get the sense that Jahad Campbell will be ready to answer the bell.
Yeah, you look at Travis Kelce recording a receiving touchdown in consecutive games dating back to Week 17 last season, and he was a guy last week, had a big play there. You'll see how the Eagles match up with him because I want to kind of zone in on that. Do you think that Kelce is still their best offensive weapon in the pass game? They don't really have that standout wide receiver with a couple of injuries.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that kind of paints the picture of the state of the Kansas City offense. Travis Kelce, to answer your question, he is still the focal point of that passing attack, and I'm expecting him to be force-fed with targets. Again, they still have Patrick Mahomes, and he's kind of like Houdini back there. He can find ways to maneuver the pocket. I mean, they do have the RPO game, the boot game, and they can. It's an offense that is multiple, so you have to always account for that. But the passing game starts with Travis Kelce, and if I'm looking at it from just a matchup perspective, I would imagine that they're going to try and test Jahad Campbell in coverage and Drew Makuba and Sidney Brown as well.
Yeah, obviously Adoree Jackson had his struggles last week, and do you anticipate, Andrew, I know what Vic Fangio said on Tuesday, does Adoree Jackson get another full game to prove himself, or do you think this is the game where they start to phase him out and maybe phase a guy like Jacorian Bennett in?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and Vic Fangio on Tuesday said right now, yes, he is the Eagles starter at corner. That, if depending on how you interpret that, that leaves it fluid, and they could obviously change. But Vic Fangio a couple of weeks ago, Mike, mentioned that whoever was that cornerback 2 opposite Quinyon Mitchell was going to get sort of a long leash. Now, we'll see how long that leash could be if Adoree starts to have some more struggles to start the game, but I think the right decision would be to plug him in as the starting corner. There's been a lot of folks who are willing to give grace to a lot of the other players on the team because the first 4 weeks of the season, more or less, is an extension of the preseason. So if you're going to give grace to others, I think Adoree Jackson deserves that as well. The Eagles haven't had they don't play their starters in the preseason, so there's very limited opportunities for them to get game reps with one another. Training camp is a different ball game. So, yeah, I think you put them out there. You try to keep some sort of continuity. You put Drew Makuba back there as well and try to get that secondary in place for a second consecutive game and see how they fare. Now, I'm not suggesting that if Adoree Jackson isn't struggling that they shouldn't turn to Jacorian Bennett. You have to see what he can do as well, especially if you're not getting the production from that spot. Before you go out and look elsewhere down the line before the trade deadline, I think they have to see what they have in Ja'Cory and Bennett first. But, yeah, I would start Adoree Jackson Sunday.
All right, Andrew DiCecco's with us, Football at 4. A big factor in the game in the Super Bowl, obviously, was the Eagles' pass rush. But they didn't blitz. 42 dropbacks, sacked 6 times, no blitzes in the game. But 2.5 by Josh Sweat, 2 by Milton Williams. They're not here anymore. Can the Eagles have a similar game plan, get to Mahomes without blitzing?
Yes, with Jalen Carter in the mix, that obviously changes the dynamic and the whole complexion of the Eagles' defense, pushing the pocket from the middle, moving him off his spot, forcing him to be hasty with his reads. But, I mean, the pass rush in totality, in terms of the edge rushers, they do leave something to be desired. It's something that we've talked about dating back to training camp, even before training camp. I'm bullish on the 2 starters, and Nolan Smith and Jalen Hunt, but they just signed Zadarius in the league. He's in his 11th season right now to bolster that group because they weren't getting enough inspired play from Josh Uche, who I thought had a good opener, Azeez Ojulari, Obo Okoronkwo, and they're trying to fortify that area. That's going to be key. But I think Jalen Carter opens things up for everyone to really feast. So it's kind of hard to really base the edge rusher group without Jalen Carter in the mix in a game setting. I think you're going to see a lot more pressure on Mahomes, and that's going to have to be key to get off to a fast start defensively.
Yeah, Andrew, I don't know how much of the Pro Football Focus numbers you're into or take stock in, but Josh Uche was the number 1 pass rush win rate guy this past weekend, and Nolan Smith was in the top 10 as well. So does that tell a better story that the Eagles' pass rush was better than maybe the naked eye says?
Yeah, I mean, there is something to be said for that. I don't weigh the PFF grades too heavily. I kind of go based off of tape and what I've seen, but I do believe that the Jalen Carter effect is obviously very real, and you're going to see other players be able to reap the benefits as a result because teams have to account for Jalen Carter. I thought Josh Uche, to your point, just based solely on the eye test and not looking at any other metrics, had a good game. And he didn't play a ton, so sometimes I think that skews the numbers. He didn't play a ton. The Eagles don't use a lot of rotation in terms of their edge rushers. But when he was out there, I saw the burst and explosiveness that you were hoping to see. There's Josh Uche of 2022, perhaps. And Nolan Smith, I thought, had a better game than Jalen Hunt in the opener. But that's going to – I think the more reps that group gets, that young contingent of Nolan Smith and Jalen Hunt, the more reps that they get, the better they're going to be and the faster they'll play, and they'll have a different ways to combat offensive tackles. So I'm not necessarily worried about that. And I do think that Jalen Carter and having that full complement of defensive linemen should open things up for them as well.
Do you anticipate Zadarius Smith having a big role, minor role? How do you kind of view him in that signing and fitting in here?
Well, minor role to start. Yesterday he mentioned that he hadn't put pads on since January 18th, seemed to be chomping at the bit. Of course, that was in the playoff game with the Lions when they lost at the Commanders. But what I think is going to happen is it's going to take maybe I do think he's going to play Sunday, but I think it may take a little bit of time for him to get fully onboarded into the finer intricacies of that defense. And yes, this is a player who, on a 6 different team, he's played in a lot of different schemes, but I still think that you have to account for that quote-unquote ramp-up period. He mentioned that he was a little bit winded during individuals yesterday, but then once they got to team period, he was rounding back into form. So he's a veteran. He'll be ready to go. I just don't think initially right off the bat he's going to play a ton. But when the dust settles, he's going to be the Eagles' 3rd edge rusher, and I do believe have a pretty prominent role.
All right, Andrew, let's flip over and look a little bit on the offensive side of the ball here. Dallas Goedert, obviously, on the injury report. There's some thoughts that he may not be able to play. How big of a loss would that be? He did have 7 catches in the game on Thursday night.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big loss. If he can't go, that's going to be a big loss. I feel like we say this every year, but it felt like we were primed for the Dallas Goedert awakening, and we still very much may see that. But to not have him, we talked about 7 targets, 7 receptions, 44 yards. He was building on that training camp chemistry with Jalen Hurts. He adds another dimension to the passing attack because you have to be mindful of the middle of the field. Thought Jalen Hurts showed some willingness to throw the ball over the middle of the field in between the hashes there. And Dallas Goedert is going to be a big part of that. But to not have him there, now you're looking at Grant Calcaterra, who is a fine pass catcher, doesn't give you much as a blocker. He's played plenty over the years because Goddard's missed time. But then you have Kylan Granson, who can be a movable piece offensively. They don't have a third tight end. They have a couple on the practice squad, and Cameron Latu, who, by the way, is wearing number 36 now, and E.J. Jenkins. So that, yeah, I mean, I think from a passing game perspective, Grant Calcaterra is going to be able to be just fine in a spot fill-in, but they're going to miss the blocking prowess and the overall well-roundedness of Dallas Goedert's game if he can't go.
Andrew, obviously Bigsby's here as well, another running back, but that means Shipley's out. Now, not a big role, but does Bigsby step into the Shipley role? Does Dillon get bumped up and have a bigger role? How do you read this Tank Bigsby trade and the impact he might have for this offense and this team?
Yeah, so kind of similar to Zadarius Smith, I'm expecting initially A.J. Dillon to take on a more expanded role, but eventually have that become Tank Bigsby because he just gives you more dynamic qualities. He's someone who has 2 years remaining on his contract, so he's going to be part of the team for the foreseeable future. That's why they gave up what they gave up to get him. But, you know, joining the team with just a handful of days to go, I'm not so sure that it's realistic to expect an expanded workload from a running back perspective. But, Mike, I am expecting him to get the looks as the primary kick returner along with John Mechie. But Tank Bigsby, that's one of his allures, is that they're going to explore that area of his game. So for week 2, I would say A.J. Dillon will see more of a workload out of the backfield, but eventually Bigsby. And when all players are fully healthy, I would expect Will Shipley to still be the 2 because he just adds something different in terms of the receiving element.
Yeah, and if you saw right off the bat in week 1, Andrew, the effect of the new kickoff rules and why a guy like Bigsby was probably targeted by Philadelphia.
Yeah, and I always say, like, that was part of it, but you don't give up a 5th and a 6th round pick purely for a kickoff returner. Obviously, having 2 years remaining on his rookie deal, and he's a player who is younger and has similar dimensions or a similar skill set, I should say, to A.J. Dillon. So you're looking towards next year, you have Saquon Barkley, Will Shipley, and Tank Bigsby. That's a pretty good stable of running backs. I think it was also made with that in mind. But also, you're right, Mike, that inside zone look that you get on kickoff returns that the Eagles run it, and getting that downhill approach, I think, is certainly something that Michael Clay seemed excited about, the Eagles special teams coordinator. And the Eagles are looking to really maximize that role. It's not just because of the new kickoff rule, there's ways that you can have an advantage in field position, and they're going to leave no stone unturned in doing that, and Tank Bigsby is going to be a big part of it.
All right, last one, we're looking at the offense here. Landon Dickerson, he was back at practice. He was on the injury report as a limited participant, but losing him would be probably a big blow. He's, obviously a key cog in there, but Brett Toth, would he be the left guard if Dickerson could not go, or do you expect Dickerson to give it a go?
Yeah, at Thursday, we're at Thursday right now, so I'll have to see how the rest of the week plays out. But right now, I mean, Landon Dickerson is tough as nails. Just when you think that he may be sidelined for a few days or even a game, he gives it a go. So as long as he's out there in a limited capacity and doesn't have any setbacks leading up to the game, I'm expecting him to give it a go. It's certainly encouraging to see him out there Wednesday. And, yeah, if he can't, Brett Toth would be the logical replacement. You saw that the Eagles' in-game solution was Brett Toth in the opener, and he's a veteran. He's in his 7th NFL season and a trusted option for the team. And Jeff Stoutland, he's really taken to Jeff Stoutland's coaching. So for a game or even a handful of snaps in a pinch, I think Brett Toth would be the guy.
All right, Super Bowl rematch. Of course, you can listen to it right here on 97.3 ESPN Football at 4. Andrew DiCecco, what is the biggest key in this game that you have your eye on this week? Eagles, Chiefs, the rematch.
Bearing down on Patrick Mahomes and not allowing him to create yards with his legs, but also not making the same mistake that the Dallas Cowboys made, Mike, and having contained with your pass rush, not getting too wide, because that's where, you tend to surrender those big plays. That's going to be paramount, playing disciplined and fundamentally sound against someone like Patrick Mahomes, who could make a ton of plays outside of structure.
All right, we'll keep our eye on that. And, of course, Andrew DiCecco and the guys, football at 4 all next week. We're getting you ready for Chiefs this week, Rams next week. Pretty big game. The loser, Chiefs, would go to 0-2. Philadelphia has to follow up with the Rams and the Bucs. Big game for both these teams on Sunday in Arrowhead. Listen to it all right here on 97.3 ESPN. That's Andrew DiCecco, and you can listen to him on the Inside the Birds podcast. Thanks, bud.
Thanks, Mike.